Good morning. This is Mr. Xiao, and today I want to teach a lesson on the comparison skill, the source-based skill of comparison. Before we get started, you should have writing materials and this set of comparison notes with you. Or at any point, if you need to speed up, slow down, or pause the video to better suit your learning pace, please do so. So for this lesson on comparison, we are going to learn how to explain the similarity and the difference between two sources. Before this lesson, you would have learned about the skill of inference. So inference takes information from one source, and we have to find out what the source is saying about a particular focus, topic, or issue. In comparison, we are now looking at two sources, but we want to do something similar. We want to find out what both sources are saying about the same topic, focus, or issue. So first of all, sources can be similar. Sources can be similar. What does that mean? If sources are similar, it means that the sources are saying the what thing? The same thing. So they're saying the same thing or a common thing about the topic. Sources can also be different. And if sources are different, then they are saying opposite things. Contrasting things about the topic. So in other words, in both cases, the sources must be addressing one topic. But on that topic or focus or issue, sources can be saying the same thing or opposite things. And that's what we deem a comparison. So let's carry on. Look at these two pictures and think for a moment. Are they saying the same thing? Are they saying opposite things? And in what way are they similar or different? So you might have realized that both sources show a student that is sleeping in class. At the same time, there's only one student sleeping. So both sources share that sleeping in class is an uncommon behavior. So these are your similarities. Then what is different? What is different about the two sources? Well, you could say that over here, the reaction of the classmate is to giggle and to smile and to wink at the sleeping child. So in other words, the attitude of the classmates is sort of positive and encouraging. Whereas in source Y, the girl here is staring with an angry face at the sleeping classmate. So the classmate here is dismissive and critical, almost scolding the girl for sleeping. So therefore, the difference is that whereas source X tells me that sleeping in class is accepted, source Y tells me that sleeping in class is not accepted by the students. Notice two things. One is that for the similarity, I only needed one statement. This one statement alone would get me the similarity. But for a difference, I needed two statements, and these two statements had to be opposite, contrasting statements. Whereas source X says that sleeping is accepted, source Y says that sleeping is not accepted. So this is the first thing to note about comparison, which is that similarity only requires one common statement. I'll call this the combined inference. So later I'll call this the combined inference. And difference requires two statements, and I'll call this later the contrasting inferences. So you can take this down at the side. The similarity is composed of uh, a combined inference, and the difference is composed of contrasting inferences. That's the first thing. The second thing is that actually there was a focus issue or topic, right? Focus issue or topic that both sources were discussing. I mean, in general, it's about sleeping in class. But if you were to look at this column that I blacked out, I'm gonna white it out now. Notice that the first inference was about the behavior that students are sleeping in class. Oh, go sleep in class. Sorry, this is a grammatical issue. Um, and both sources note that sleeping in class is uncommon. So the criteria here is frequency of sleeping. That's the common topic. So a criterion is again a common issue, focus issue topic. And they're different in terms of the attitude of the other students, right? On one hand, this is a accepting positive attitude. On the other hand, this is a rejecting negative attitude. So, in other words, when we compare, we have to be very clear about what criterion we're using, what focus, topic, or issue we're using. Why does that matter? Think for a moment to yourself. Why does it matter that I need a criterion? I need a basis. I need a yardstick. I need a common topic, focus, or issue to compare the two sources. And it should be quite evident, because if you don't use a common criterion, focus, issue, topic, then you're not actually comparing. You're just saying something about each source in turn. For I could say that, oh, source X has boys and girls, and source Y has tables. Sure, you are saying something about both sources, but are you actually comparing? Comparing the sources in the sense that you are looking at the two sources and trying to find out how they are linked? You are not, right? You're just saying something in turn about both sources. So if you were to go to the last page, where there, as usual, there are source-based skill rubrics, right? The weakest kind of answers is when you don't have a match of a common topic issue. You are comparing apples to donkeys. And these sort of answers where you don't have a common criterion, you don't have a common focus topic or issue, it would fall into the lowest level of response. Okay. So that's why I have this column here. So let me recap very quickly. The two things I wanted you to take note about. First is that for similarity, you just need one statement combined. But for difference, you need two contrasting. And second is that all these comparisons, whether similar or different, there is a criterion on which we measure and state the similarity and difference. Okay, so those two things. So let's look at the second page now. When we do comparison as a skill, the question can be phrased. The question is phrased in a way that demands a certain type of answer. So what do I mean? So first of all, when you look at the first question, how similar or how different? This is what we would call a command word. So you can take it down. You can highlight it, and then you can write a little arrow into the side of the worksheet, the margin, and you can write that command word. So the command word indicates what sort of answers you need to use. In this case, if the command word is similar or different, you have to answer by saying the sources are similar, sources are different. If the command word instead is agree or disagree, then you would need to answer by using the words agree, disagree. In other words, your answer should follow the command word. There are cases where the question asks how similar, different, and students responded by agree and disagree. That's counted as a no ATQ answer. And no ATQ answers will run the risk of getting zero. And we have awarded zero before. So answer the question to command word. That's the first thing. The second thing is that when we ask how similar, the question demands both similar and different. um when we ask how are they similar, the question only demands similar. How are they different? The question only demands different. Look at these examples yourself and figure out what matches what. People often get confused. It's normal to get confused. If you are confused in the exam, just write both similar and different because you don't get penalized. You don't have, there's no negative marking. Answers that are not relevant are just ignored, but the answers that are correct are awarded. So the worst case scenario is if the question were asking a two-sided comparison and you only gave one side, like similar or different. So you would miss half the marks in that question. Okay, next, the answering frame. So comparison we have actually learned in lower sec. So in many ways this is a recap. But what is new in today's lesson is that there are actually three levels. Broadly speaking, there are three levels of comparison that we do in upper sec towards O level and level examinations. And in lower sec, we have really only taught you the first level. So the first level is a content comparison. Content means what the source is saying directly from the source. So you would be familiar with this sort of answering style. Sources say X and Y are similar in telling me blah blah blah. Everything from source X, everything from source Y. Or sources X and Y are different in terms of blah blah blah. Source X says this, whereas source Y says that. Everything from source X, everything from source Y. So this whole thing about the combined inference and the contrasting inference that we have learned, it's a content level comparison, which means that there are other levels of comparison that you haven't been taught. So I'm going to briefly talk about them today. Before I jump there, I just want you to note the general approach for answering a comparison question at the content level. You start with the ATQ, use the command word, like we said. You know, if it's similar, answer similar. If it's different, answer. If it's agree, answer agree. If it's similar, different, answer similar, different. Okay. That's the first thing, ATQ. Second thing is that for a similarity, you jump straight to the combined inference. So the combined inference goes here. But if it's a difference or a disagreement, you start with the criterion. And then you go into the contrasting inferences. And you should be using words that are opposite to show the contrast. For example, if this were a positive impact, this would be a negative impact. If this would be high support for the government, this would be low support for the government. If this was saying national service is beneficial, this would be negative. National service is harmful. So you need to have some sort of contrast in from the sources. If this were you know the government provides a lot of support to poor people, this would be the government is not providing enough support. So there needs to be a contrast in your difference, and that would be based on the criterion. It will be based on the criterion. Okay, so that's the content level. Um, we'll look at this when we do the actual practice. So this is a frame. This is a frame. Don't actually write anything in this box. Sorry, I should have said this earlier. Don't actually write anything in this box. Take your notes outside the box because you want the frame here with the blanks to show you what goes into the writing approach. Okay. So that's content. Then we have tone. Tone is new. Tone is new. The tone of a source, very broadly speaking, refers to how the source sounds. So in a way, it's like emotional language. And I think you can tell tone from daily life, right? Let's take an example. Suppose you're at home and your family member has a very treasured, vase or cup or mug or some sort of crystal item. I know this because my family keeps a lot of crystal and it's locked up in the cabinet. So imagine one day you just itchy fingers when to play with the glass or crystal and you broke it and imagine now your parent or guardian or sibling sees this broken item and sees that you broke it and they shout your name. Okay, they shout your name could be, I don't know, a Dylan or Hazel or a Gallin or a Elrina or a Braden, or so they shout your name, right? So the source could be something like this. Sorry, I'm just gonna borrow this name, like Jaden. Pick up that crystal now. How could you have broken it? You you are such a naughty and clumsy boy. This is ridiculous. Also, like this is actually words that are written down, right? You can't hear the words, but you can see like from the exclamation marks. You can see from the exclamation marks and the words that this person is actually pretty angry. So that's a tone, right? Furious tone, angry tone, versus a calm tone. So there are different ways that we can do tone, like positive, praising, negative, critical, admonishing. Um, and these tones can come out in certain sources. So if you see two sources that have obviously opposite tones, like one is congratulatory and praising, versus another that is um negative and critical, then tone becomes a possible answer for your comparison. And tone is a higher level comparison as compared to a content comparison because you have picked up on something beyond purely what the source is saying. Okay. So that's about tone. It's emotional language, which means that the evidence you select also has to be the sort of emotional words and language in that source. Don't copy everything, but highlight the emotional words and language in that source. And tone doesn't just stop at the actual tone. You can't just stop at saying, the source has a positive or a negative tone. You have to go on with the inference. So you have to continue with the inference, similar to what we did in the previous part on content. You start the tone, but then you go on to state the inference, and then you give the emotive language as the evidence. Okay, so that is tone. Now purpose. Purpose comparison is essentially what we do in the purpose question. You look at two sources. We know that sources have their own agendas. We know that some sources want to achieve certain things. So when you look at two sources and you figure out from their provenance and their content, you realize that, oh, these two sources are sending a message. And if it turns out that two sources are having a similar message, similar target audience, similar intended outcome, then you could say actually they are similar in their purpose. They agree in their purpose. Which word you choose here, by the way, follow the command word of the question. Um, Alternatively, you could realize that they have different purposes. So then you go with, oh, sources X and Y are different in their purpose, and then you have to establish two different purposes. So if you think they have a similar purpose, you establish one common purpose, one combined VAMO. If you think they have opposite contrasting purposes, you establish two different purposes, two VAMOs, VAMO 1 and VAMO 2, from both sources. And of course, in the VAMO, you do evidence after message. Okay, so there are three theoretical generic approaches to doing comparison. Then you're thinking, okay, that's crazy. you just want to do a two-sided comparison. We said that, they're similar and different. Why are there three different approaches? Well, the answer is that whenever you approach a source and the question, you choose the level of comparison you want to do. So in general, and you can write this at the bottom now. In general, most comparison questions, most of them will demand two-sided. Most of them will demand two-sided. Similar or agree, or different disagree. Most of them will demand two-sided. One side will be content, and other side you can do tone or purpose. I suggest purpose because not every source has tone. So this is your general way. So for example, if you do, they are similar in purpose, then you're going to continue with a difference in content. Different in terms of what? If you do a similar in content, then you're going to do the other side different in purpose. So you always do two-sided, but your strategy will change. It can change for either side. If you cannot find tone or purpose, then you can just do content on both sides. Similar in saying this, different in terms of that. Okay, so that's the generic approach. If you need to recap, just replay whatever part of this video where I explain certain things. And then let's go to practice. I think through practice, you will get a better sense of what we are doing. So the practice topic that we are working on is meritocracy. Meritocracy is in issue 1. It's one of the idea shaping governance. In the new syllabus, I think they call it the principle shaping governance. So meritocracy, what is meritocracy? Let's do a quick recap. It is about opportunities and rewards being given based on performance and achievements. What does that mean? So I'll give an example. Imagine that maybe an example from school. Imagine that the English talent management program in school has some tickets to watch a play. Okay, and everyone wants those tickets because it's enjoyable. You go watch something that extends your learning, and of course, maybe you skip some school activities to go watch it. So everyone wants those tickets. So what is the fair way to make sure you get those tickets? It could be a random number generator. It could be based on who the teacher likes, or it could be based on your English end of year test scores. So which was the fair way? In general, I think most people would say that look at your test scores because the test was a fair exam, right? Everyone took the same exam. Everyone had a chance to do well. Everyone tried their best, and the people who really put in the effort and hard work deserve to go. So instead of granting it based on who the teacher likes, or even worse, granting it based on background factors like race, religion, nationality, worse in the sense of then it could be seen as discriminatory. We learned that in issue 2. So performance and achievement seems to be like this fair way because you work well, you achieved it, you should get opportunity. In Singapore, we do have EduSave scholarships, and this is typically granted to the top 10% of any cohort. So you get money from the government for doing well in studies. That's another example of meritocracy. So people say, well, if you are rewarded based on talent and effort, then it's fair. Furthermore, people want to work harder. And then if people work harder, the whole society benefits because everyone is contributing more. But on the other hand, some people say that the playing field is not even. We will look at source A later. That is a graphic representation of this. Because some people are born with less resources, so they can't go for tuition to improve their English results because they can't pay the tuition teacher, or maybe they have to help their parents with work. So instead of having the time to do their homework and study, they end up spending their time helping with the family business. So you could really imagine a whole series of different conditions that make it such that it's an uneven playing field. So was it really fair? Okay. So I leave you to read the background information on your own, to read your textbook to find out more about meritocracy online, to figure things out. I want to jump to the skill of comparison. So there's source A, B, C, D, E. We'll start by comparing source A and B. Okay. So I'm going to make some brief remarks about these sources. Can I suggest that you annotate at the side of the sources or highlight as we go along so that you can do the comparison question easier later. So the first one is a cartoon. Cartoons typically have agendas. You expect the cartoons have purposes. Why do we think so? Because cartoons always have an audience. And the nature of cartoons is that they want to mock, satirize, caricature. They want to make fun of something, right? That's why it's a cartoon. It's meant to be funny. It's funny when you make fun of something, which means that cartoons can be very critical. They can have a mocking tone. They can be sarcastic. And all three elements of our comparison come into play. You can compare on content, tone, and purpose. So in this case, you know that this cartoon is about the meritocratic system. Let's start at the bottom. You have this person wearing, the graduation hat, so it's a uni graduate. He looks exhausted and tired. He's wearing spectacles, so you know that he studies, I guess. He's exhausted because he is being tied. So he's tied to these two elderly folk, possibly their parents. So which means that in a race, right, if you are being tied to some a weight, you're going to be slower. So in a way, it's saying that this university graduate has his own burdens, right? It's not a commentary on parents being burdens. Rather, the commentary here is that the starting line is the same, but the university graduate has a burden to bear, is being held back by something. So what's the opposite? Opposite is this guy. He looks to have had a pretty luxurious lifestyle. He's a bit bigger than his friend. Okay, but he's not being weighed down. It's the opposite, right? He's sitting on top of this car that again maybe his parents are driving. So in other words, right, they are running the same race, but are they running with the same tools? And the answer is no. The answer is no, because someone has a parent's car to be driven on. The other one has to pull his parents along on the cart. So in other words, this cartoon is very critical of meritocracy, right? It looks fair because it's the same starting line, but everything else makes it unfair. Okay. I hope you wrote out some notes at the side. So now we look at the speech. Okay. The first sentence defines meritocracy. Individuals' ability and achievement, not connections, wealth, or family background. So already this is a contrast to the first source, because the speech here by Goh Chok Tong, by our senior minister, claims that, well, meritocracy is not about wealth, and that's true. On the face of it, you perform well, you get rewarded. But what drives that performance? The first source says is because if you are richer, you would perform well. Okay. Okay, so this is a pretty positive source. Already the tone is very different. One is negative, one is critical, one's positive and supportive, right? Best means to harness. Okay, so this is a positive and supportive source. You could compare tone. It's come out already. The best means to harness the talents part. The word best is emotive, is emotional. It is a very supportive and affirmative tone. The second paragraph is interesting because it's also criticizing the limitations of meritocracy. And Goh Chok Tong is here. He's very nuanced. He's actually very skillful. He's saying that it's not that meritocracy is unfair. It's just that meritocracy creates unequal outcomes. It's not the same thing. It could be a fair system. I'm fairly giving the people who do well better rewards. But because the fact that they get better rewards means that someone else got a worse reward, then it is unequal. It is unequal without being unfair. Can you see what I mean? Going back to the example of the play tickets from English telemanagement program, it was fair because everyone took the same English exam. But in the end, the outcomes will be unfair because some people will get the play tickets and some people will not get the play tickets. So he's saying that the fact that there's unequal outcomes, people will be unhappy. So people who don't do well will think that the system is biased. So it's not that the system is biased. It's that people who don't do well think the system is biased. So Goh Chok Tong puts the responsibility on people who are not performing as well. Okay. So we are going to compare these two sources. Study sources A and be? How similar, how different are these two sources? So the command word here is different, which means that we are going with a similar and different sort of ATQ. Okay, so the first one, we do similar, similar. Similar in telling me that what is the similarity? I think the perception of this part, right? I think this one. The perception that meritocracy can be biased. Similar in telling me that meritocracy creates unequal outcomes. Okay, that's lifting. So meritocracy creates um leads to different rewards for different people, and therefore can be seen as unfair and 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 uh mainly and helping the rich at the expense of the poor. Source A, which shows two young men running the same race, but one has to carry his parents, whereas the other gets to ride on a car driven by his parents. Okay. You can take this down. So this is the similarity. I do the steps, I ATQ, I do the combined inference, I do the evidence. Okay, now let's do the difference. Sources A and B are different. We start with the ATQ. And notice that for difference, I mentioned this earlier, I'll say it again. For difference, you must have the criterion come out. You could do this for similarity. You could say similar in terms of as well. So criterion is necessary for difference, optional for similarity. Why? Because in difference, you are not going to do one inference, you're going to do two inferences. And these will be contrasting opposite inferences. So, what are they opposite about? It has to come out in the criterion. So, in this case, about whether meritocracy is a fair system, source A says that unfair. Because those with more resources get ahead, whereas source B tells me that meritocracy is fair. Because it allows everyone to contribute. So, source A, which shows one man running the race by being driven atop a luxurious car, whereas running the meritocracy race, the other man is running with a burden to carry on his run. And source B, which states, source B says it's fair. Why is it fair? It's not on the basis of connections, wealth, or family background. It is the best means to use the talents. Okay. So I think the similarity and difference really sort of emerge quite strongly in these two sources. So now I invite you to think about the higher level. Suppose we wanted to transform the difference or the similarity into a purpose comparison. The first question we need to ask is it similar or different in purpose? One is a cartoon. In general, it is critical. The message here is really criticizing the meritocratic system. One is a speech, and he is defending the meritocratic system. He's saying that it's the best means. Unequal outcomes do happen, but it's really and people think it's biased, but that's what they think. It's not true. It's just that people they didn't do well, so they have a reason to think it's biased, but it's not true. It's the best means. So clearly these two sources have a very different messages. they are likely to have different outcomes. So we want a difference in purpose. So how do I transmute the difference in content to a difference in purpose? Well, my contrasting inferences are essentially two messages. Two messages. So I need to include the verb, audience, and outcome, and I'm good. So the first one, the cartoon, it wants to criticize the Singapore government that meritocracy is unfair because those with more resources get an advantage and get ahead more easily. Whereas, and this is evident from source A, and so that the audience, the government, will improve meritocracy by giving more financial support to the needy. Maybe they can support the university graduate by giving support to the parents, so the graduate doesn't have the same burden to carry. Then the race would be fairer, right? Not only are you at the same start line, but one, you don't have to drag along, or you are not being pulled back by your own responsibilities and commitments, unlike other people. However, source B wants to convince. Sorry, let me change this to convince. Convince the students that meritocracy is fair because it allows everyone to contribute their fullest ability to make Singapore a better place. And let me change this inference because it is not based. It is based on people's own effort and their not their money or not their money or birth. I think this would be a better inference, and and promote society's the good of society, and can promote the best people to contribute to society. Okay, sorry, I just needed to change the inference. I think the earlier one was a bit off. So because it's based on people's own effort, so in a sense, it's a choice, right? People can choose how much effort they want to put in. If you didn't choose it, you don't choose to put in effort, you lose. And not money or birth is something that is out of people's control. So it's fair because people had the choice. If they choose to put in effort, they get rewarded. They don't choose to put in effort, they slack off, then they don't get the reward. And then it also helps promote the people to contribute to society. Why? Why would we say this to the students? So that the students will support the government policy and work hard in school so they can gain into schools and contribute to Singapore. This is really basically the students are the people in his speech, right? He's saying that so interesting. The best means to harness the talent of our people. Who are talented people? Well, he's talking to people in the top school. If you go Google the link I put in the source acknowledgements, this actually, I believe, is Raffles. He went back to Raffles to make a speech about, about wow, meritocracy helps to promote the talents. And of course, the people listening to this speech at Raffles, the top school students, they're hearing this and they're thinking, we are the talents that are going to get promoted. So it's a bit of a, yeah, he's preaching to the converted choir. He's saying something that they already believe in. But anyway, he wants them to work hard and then, get promoted and support meritocracy and do well and contribute to Singapore. Okay. So what have we done? What have we done? We have done a comparison. We have done a similar in content. We've done a difference in content and we've done a difference in purpose. What I want you to do is to copy now. Copy Q1 on Foolscap. What does that mean? Copy the question and then copy the full answer like this. We're going to do the purpose answer. So don't copy the content one. copy this full answer on Foolscap, the question and the 2 paragraphs. And I think this would give you a very good sense of how we craft the comparison answer. Because as you copy, actually, I think you get some practice, some sort of tactile learning, and then I think you are well placed to figure out the next few questions. Okay, you can pause the video here, you can copy this, and then I'm going to make one last comment about the purpose comparison. The last comment is that if you see all this VAMO around, verb, audience, message, outcome, you're wondering, oh, how do I know how to do this? Refer to the previous lesson on purpose. I've given you a set of verbs, a set of audiences. I've taught you how to find the outcome. So use that previous lesson. Remember how to do purpose. Comparison of purpose is doing purpose for 2 sources. If it's a similar in purpose, you do one combined VAMO. If it's a difference in purpose, you do 2 contrasting VAMOs. So it's pretty much the same as the content comparison, just that instead of doing a single inference or contrasting inferences, you're doing the whole VAMO set. So indeed, purpose comparisons tend to be very tedious, but at the same time, we have to learn this and to practice this because purpose comparisons get us the highest mark. And a comparison question in SS at O level or N level can be 7 marks. It's basically your almost an essay, kind of essay level question. So definitely the answers would be a bit longer. Okay. If you wanted to try tone, like a different paragraph on tone for these 2 sources, I would say the first source is a critical, mocking, negative tone. The second one is sort of positive, supportive tone. You could try. And then you do the same, the contrasting inferences. Critical tone in telling me that, positive and supportive tone in telling me that. So you could try this. Okay. Then I'm going to talk about the question 2A and 2B. Okay. I think I'll just talk about 2A and 2B and then we'll call it a lesson. The reason why this one is numbered so weirdly is because I wanted to show you the difference between a comparison question without a focus and with a focus. So look at 2A. Study sources C and D. How far would the sources agree? There's no question focus. The command word is agree. There's no question focus. So you will do the same thing as what we did in question 1. We find a combined inference, that's agree. We find a set of contrasting inferences, that's disagree. Let's try that now. So C and D, combined inference, contrasting inference. Can you pause the video and read the sources yourself? Use 2 highlighters. I should have said this earlier. Whenever you do comparison, use 2 highlighters. One highlighter highlight what you think is the similarity in both sources. The other color, you highlight what you think is the difference. So let me practice what I preach. I'm just going to highlight now. I'm going to look for the agreement first, the agreement. So where do they agree? It's here. The agreement is the first sentence. It comes up immediately. It's that, meritocracy has promoted social mobility. And social mobility is defined in the background information. It is that the ability of people to improve their social economic status. So if you didn't highlight this earlier, sorry I skipped this out, please highlight it. That's social mobility. Okay, so the agreement is here. What about the disagreement? It's about how to improve meritocracy. Okay, so I'm going to do the question, yeah? So I will go with ATQ. I'm going to talk and do it at the same time. I'm going to go with ATQ. Sources C and D agree that meritocracy had great benefits by enabling Singaporeans to improve their economic and social conditions through their own effort and hard work. This is evident very fast from source C, which states, and from source D. Thus allowing them to live better lives. Oh, so fast. In 3 minutes, you have done the similarity is down pat. Okay. Okay. Now let's do the disagreement, the difference, the disagreement. Sources C and D disagree in terms of, let's do the normal content disagreement and then we do an evolution, okay? We evolve into purpose. Actually, let's do the content disagreement, then we figure out whether purpose is similar or different. Okay. Sorry, purpose agree or disagree. Disagree in terms of how to improve meritocracy. A source C tells me that Singapore can improve meritocracy by enabling young children early in life, by intervening early in life, by enabling young children to have access, to have the best educational um, education and I want to say cultivation, but that's not quite right. Um, Conditions to grow up in and develop in. Whereas Source D tells me that Singapore can improve meritocracy by not about Sec 4 or JC2 or what happens after that, by intervening at at the later life stages by by promoting continuous and enabling continuous improvement and change even after for individuals, even after their formal education. So this is the difference, right? One's early and one's late. Okay, so I think we are quite satisfied. I'm quite satisfied. We ate up the difference in about another 3 minutes. Okay. Um. Agree, combine inference, mental degree benefit. Disagree, how to improve. One early, one late. So it's quite clear, right? We did this exercise earlier when we talk about disagree is contrasting. So one early, one late, it comes out. There could be a number of answers. You could also say they agree that meritocracy has to be improved. That's actually an agreement as well, right? One is how to improve, but it's true that both say it has to be improved. You could disagree in terms of the attitudes towards or who is responsible. Actually, I do want to write this out a little bit. Source C says it's the government, whereas Source D, who is the government? by oh by by mixing by interacting with and being open, improvement, upscaling, even after their so so this is another disagreement. I think it's important because this is a criteria where it's not obvious that the government and the people are opposites, but you could see how this disagreement works. You can pull out the evidence on your own. I'm at 15 minutes for this video. I want to evolve this into a purpose answer. Then I want to show you how to do the focus, like the question focus type question, and then I'll end this lesson. So one is a commentary, one is an interview. I think that in general, because the first commentary is sort of targeted at the government, what the government can do, but the second one is targeted at people in Singapore. This interview is more about what Singaporeans can do. I think in general, the purpose is different. The purpose is different. So I'm going to use actually the second disagreement that we did. I'm going to transform this into a purpose answer. So first of all, uh, let me insert. Never mind. Let me just go straight to the purpose. So I'm going to use this, but I'm going to write a purpose answer. Yeah. Sources C and D disagree in their purpose. Source D, C wants to convince the government that it is responsible, and then I'm gonna put the inference in as a message. Governance need to have, yeah, it's governance, right? So it's the government. So source C is quite clear. Okay. Then let's do the outcome. This is done so that I have the verb audience message on the outcome. This is done so that the government will pump in more resources, which will promote the development of children capacities or help them grow well, or send off the edges of meritocracy, make meritocracy a fairer system, and ultimately create a better society. Wow, great. Source D, however, wants to. What does Source D want? Interview with the deputy prime minister. Is publicly published for the people. So wants to um educate the public of Singapore that what? It's the people. The people are responsible. Okay, now I'm done with that. I'm just gonna continue with the evidence. This is evident from Source D. States. Uh, and why does Source D do this? Actually, should I change this color? Let me change the color to blue so that you can see where the two sources interact. I've done the second verb audience message. What's the last part? It is outcome, right? Public of Singapore will what? What will they do? They will um they will be more willing to befriend people of all backgrounds, and which would reduce biases, stigma, and discrimination, and make society more fluid. The public, people would also be open to opportunities to upskill and develop themselves, thus, thus increasing their social mobility and chances of promotion later in life, and which would make meritocracy more effective in promoting social mobility in the country. Which makes promoting social mobility. I think that's fine. Just and a social mobility. Okay. So I've transformed the the disagreement in content to disagreement in purpose. Do the same thing. Do the same thing. What's the same thing? Copy 2A the question and the answer on Foolscap. Pause your video here. Copy 2A question and answer on Foolscap. Okay, I'm gonna end the video now. I took really quite long. I'm sorry. Okay, I want to talk about 2B, and then the rest you can go and figure out on your own. But honestly, you saw how I did 2A, right? It can be done in like matter of minutes. Use the 2 highlighter trick. The 2 highlighter trick it really works. Okay, so when I see question 2B, command word agree, so I know it's agree disagree. But here's something special. There is a question focus, which means that when I do 2B, I would have to address the focus as well. So there's a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing is that you don't have to think too hard to come up with this like contrasting inferences or the common inference or whatnot. You already have a focus. But the bad thing is you have to be creative because if the focus is quite limited, sometimes you have trouble finding both agreement and disagreement. Trouble finding like the two-sided answer. So how do we do this? Okay. So you always type ATQ. Like where do you start? You always type ATQ. Let's type the agreement first. Sources C and D agree that the practice of meritocracy. You see, I'm going straight for the focus, so I don't lose my way. The practice of meritocracy has been beneficial, so I'm just gonna continue. Has had great benefits. So like, it's just the same inference, but I inserted the focus. Okay, then we need to do the disagreement. Sources C and D disagree. Let's jump straight to the purpose. We've already done it in terms of their purpose. Source C. Actually, sorry. Let me just do the normal criteria. Sources C and D disagree in terms of who is responsible for improving the practice of meritocracy. So for question 2B, I leave you to try this on your own. Try the content level. Try 2 sides content level using this focus and see how we need to insert and make sure that the focus is actually in both answers. So the trick in doing a comparison and focus is that sometimes it's hard to figure out and tease out like both the agree and the disagree side for the same focus. Like you get caught because if you say something for agree, you can't say it for disagree. So sometimes you get caught. So you need to be creative when there's a question of a focus. But you do have to use the focus. Okay. Conclude the lesson. We have learned a lot about comparison. Okay, we have learned about content level. Let me conclude on this. We have learned about the content level, the tone level, which is the content level plus the tone word, for both sources, and the purpose level, where you need to do 2 varmos or 1 varmo, depending on whether or not it's a similar and agree purpose or different or disagree purpose. In order to figure out whether or not you're doing well in your answer, there's a rubric on the last page where you can check the quality of your answer, make sure that you have make sure your answer is hitting all the right boxes. So use the excellent column to check that your answers are good. And finally, having copied out question 1 and question 2A on your own, please on Foolscap do 2B, the content level, both sides agree and disagree, and then do question 3 and 4 on your own. And I would say when you do 3 and 4 and you're doing both sides, for 3 the command word is similar, so you need to do similar and different. For 4 the command words agree, so you do agree disagree. When you're doing both sides, try to do one side of purpose. And I'm going to give you a spoiler. One of these questions, I've set it so that you can expect the purpose to be similar. So, or agree. So that you have practice doing both types of purpose comparisons, similar purpose and different purpose. Okay. So I hope that you have achieved the objectives today. Being able to explain a similarity and explain a difference. And have a good day ahead. Okay, bye bye.